Monday morning here on the Kevin Wheeler Show on 101 ESPN. As you would imagine, football dominating much of the discussion today. And playoff football and the college football playoffs certainly a part of that. But, of course, from our end here in St. Louis, the story in the L.A. Times has generated a lot more buzz than even the playoffs have. And for obvious reason, the story this morning from Sam Farmer in the L.A. Times, and again, officially sourced here, got information from both the Stockbridge Capital Group and the Kroenke Group about the two partnering on a stadium project, a sports and entertainment project in California. It's the Hollywood Park site, almost 300 acres of land, plenty big for an NFL stadium. And, we're looking at this from as many angles as we can. And to get a little help with some insight on this is somebody that knows the business side of the NFL as well as anyone. And that's Andrew Brandt from ESPN, and, of course, writes for the Monday Morning Quarterback on SI.com as well. And, Andrew, it's always a pleasure to talk business with you and talk football with you. Thank you for doing this. I know it was late notice today. What was your take on what you read in the L.A. Times on that story?
Yeah, good morning. I think that, first of all, the business of the NFL never slows down. Here we are in the playoffs, and there should be so much attention on the field, which there is, but it just seems like everything happening off the field is always in the news, whether it's the coaching interviews or the business still resonating from the Peterson and Ray Rice situations and the credibility issue of the league and with the call yesterday. But focusing on L.A. and St. Louis, I guess what my thought was this. I was at the Super Bowl press conference, and I guess it was just this, probably not where you are, but kind of an undernoted story that Stan Kroenke bought land in Inglewood right around the LA Forum site. And I kind of looked at that, and my antenna went up, and I that's interesting. You have an NFL owner in a city that has been talked about as attracting an NFL team for the past 20 years, buying property right where a stadium could fit. And the NFL is keeping talking about, well, LA's not working because we don't have the right ownership group and we don't have the land.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at that and said, okay, here's an owner and here's the land. So the question was asked to Goodell in that press conference, someone did ask it, what about Stan Kroenke buying that land? And I'll never forget his answer, paraphrasing, was that, he's a very wealthy guy. He buys a lot of land.
Right.
And I think he even said something like internationally, nationally, something like that. And I'm like, that's not the right answer. There has to be a better answer than that. And now the other shoe is dropping, where there's more to it than just some guy buying land who's wealthy. So there seems to be some traction here. Obviously, there's a lot of hoops to jump through on the league side, on the environmental side, on the construction side, on the LA politics side. But here we have traction for the first time in a while.
Absolutely. So would your read on this be, and I think we've gotten two reactions from our listeners, Andrew. One is that it's clear that Stan's kind of planting a flag in Los Angeles and saying, I want L.A., and I'm going to get a stadium done so you can't really fight me on it. Or B, it's a leverage point to use against St. Louis, and maybe it's a little bit of both to try to get more public funding here, because that project apparently is not going to be publicly funded.
I think it is some of both. I always say this. My first NFL owners meeting was in 1999 when I joined the Packers, and I remember top of the agenda in that meeting was getting a team in L.A. Here we are 16 years later, and nothing's gone on. I just think it's always been something where the site hasn't worked, the owner hasn't worked. But I think, as you mentioned, it's almost been a stalking horse for owners to get what they want out of their local municipalities. I was in the NFC North with the Packers, and we looked across the border at Minnesota, and every year they were complaining about the University of Minnesota got public funding, the Twins got public funding, the Timberwolves got public funding, and here they were, the ugly stepsister of the Vikings. They couldn't get it. Well, of course, Roger Goodell made some trips out there, and lo and behold, public financing comes in for the Vikings, and now their new stadium will open in a couple of years. So it happened. And I don't doubt for a minute that L.A. was used as potential leverage. Maybe in Jacksonville, maybe in Buffalo, maybe other places. And you know better than I do whether it has been used or maybe will be used there, but that's always been, to me, why L.A. has not had a team, because it's been such leverage for owners to get what they want out of their own cities.
Absolutely. Andrew Brandt, kind enough to spend some time with us here on a Monday morning. You can find him on Twitter at @ADBrandt. ESPN's NFL Business Insider, also writes for the Monday Morning Quarterback on Sports Illustrated, SI.com. And the other angle I wanted to get into this, another thing we're trying to kind of sort through, and maybe with your contacts and your experience, you'd have a better feel for this. Would this be something that Kroenke is doing, kind of like Cowboy, doing it on his own and saying, hey, you guys don't want me to do this or you want to sign off on it? Well, I'm going to do the deal anyway, and you can just sign off on it later. Will this be something that could anger the NFL or other owners, or do you think that he's got a little wink, wink, nod, nod thing going on here and knowing that he's probably going to get support anyway?
That's the $500 million question, and that's the thing I'm trying to decide. I'm trying to figure out. He is not, as everyone knows, one of these vocal owners. He's not Robert Kraft. He's not John Mara. He's not Jerry Richardson. He's not Jerry Jones, Dan Snyder. I mean, he is a guy that's silent and it stays in the shadows, in the background, and I think it's his personality. So it's not clear whether politics is going on here. If it was some of these other guys I mentioned, sure, they've already got the votes if something like that were to come out. But with someone like him, who's working the scenes? Does he have operatives? Obviously, he has people going to the meetings, and they are working the scenes with other owners and other executives. But that's the question. Does he have support? And not just from owners.
Right.
The key to me is, does he have support from Goodell? Does he have support from the upper echelon of the NFL? Are they upset about this? Are they behind it? That's really the question. I don't think we're going to get that answer. And my only thing is going back to what I started with. When Roger Goodell says he buys a lot of land, he knows that's not the right answer.
Right.
So something was going on there.
That's why, and I saw you tweet that, and that's kind of what triggered my thought process on maybe there is, if not an agreement, at least kind of an understanding, because the stadium's been such a problem. If Stan says, well, I can solve the stadium thing by getting in partnership with this group, that can grease the skids. And again, I guess I wonder, because I've heard other reports, Andrew, that there are some people in the NFL that aren't really happy with the way that he does business, and that the cross ownership stuff with the Avalanche and the Nuggets really hasn't been taken care of the right way so far, and that he just kind of does his own thing and doesn't really work with the rest of the group. So I'm not sure which way I go on this.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how this comes out. I think there's been a statement from Brian McCarthy of the league, the PR, about the 24 votes, and nothing would ever happen without the 24 votes. I think that's down the line. I think the real question is, before we get to any kind of vote on whether it could be a move, how are they responding to this Sam Farmer report? And Sam's very tied in with the NFL about what's happening now. I mean, we're a long way from a vote, but I think we need to hear, is this something that is being tacitly allowed to go on, or are they going to nip it in the bud, or where are we going with this? And I know these are questions we all want to know. Right,
and I know where I would lean. I'd be curious to see if you would lean one way or the other too. Is, to me, silence would be a move condoning the action. That if there's no statement, then I'm taking it as the league is cool with what's going on.
Yeah, and again, Sam Farmer is very plugged in, and when he puts out a statement about L.A. getting some traction towards the Rams, yeah, I mean, the league he's probably doing this with the league knowing he's doing it. So, yeah, tacit approval would probably be where I would lean on this.
And finally, Andrew, I've been on the cooler head side of things here in St. Louis. There's a lot of, as you would imagine, a lot of tension about this story. And there's a segment of fans and people in town that really believe it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to go and Stan wants to go. And I've been on the other side, kind of, okay, let's hold off and make sure that we know what's going on before we start packing any moving trucks. For me, this story changed a little bit of how I'm looking at this. Does this story, this latest development from Sam Farmer's report, change how you perceive the situation of the NFL in St. Louis?
Slightly, yes. I mean, I looked at L.A. with 3 potential applicants, all with stadium issues: the Raiders, the Rams, and the Chargers. And I guess what I would say, rather than saying this is going to the finish line, I would say in this race, you would have to think the Rams have nudged ahead of the other 2. That still means there's a long way to go in the horse race. But as the race begins, or it's the second turn or the quarter turn, I would say the Rams are in the lead.
Well, certainly a story we'll be following very closely. I appreciate you spending some time with us, Andrew. And really, by the way, on a side note, appreciated the story you did on the best and worst business decisions in the NFL on the Monday Morning